how you doing? Today we're doing my September wrap up. Like always, let's just start off with the stats. In September I read 17 books, which amounted to 5,675 pages read, which is an average of 332.82 pages per book and 189.16 pages per day. Then for the format in which I read them, 8 of the books that I read were books I physically owned. 1 was an ebook, 6 were galleys from NetGalley, and 2 were library books. Then for star rating, we have all across the spectrum again. We hate to see it. I have 1 star, 3 2 stars, 7 3 stars, 4 4 stars, 2 5 stars, and an average rating of 3.17. Yes, I also hate that very large amount of 3 stars. It's no fun. It's the least fun rating to have, truly. Then for age range, I read 6 YA books, 2 new adult books, and 9 adult novels. And for genre, we have 2 graphic novels, 2 fantasies, 9 contemporaries, 2 non-fictions, 1 manga, and 1 historical fiction with a historical romance. And yeah, let's just get down the list of all 17 books that I read, starting off with Height, a graphic novel by Kiersten White, Scott Peterson, Veronica and Andy Fish, which gave 2 5 stars to the gallery I got from NetGalley. This is a graphic novel adaptation of Height by Kiersten White, which I believe came out last year, and that's like a adult horror novel, and that has gotten very mixed reviews, but I read it and actually really enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't perfect, but I did have a good time reading it. So I was really excited to read this graphic novel adaptation, and I just personally didn't like it as much as the novel because I didn't feel like that same suspense with the graphic novel that I did with the actual book. Because I do think, because the graphic novel format, and it's like it has to be like shortened, basically, the story, I feel like it gives away answers earlier than the book does, just to make it flow nicely, but that way you just kind of lose that suspense element in there. Then next I read The Colleen Lily by Richelle Mead, which I gave 5 stars to. And if you've been around in the channel, you know, I believe in 2020 I read the Vampire Academy series and absolutely loved it. And then last year I finally read Bloodlines, which is the first book in this series, which is a spin-off series from Vampire Academy series. And I wasn't a big fan of that book, so I was really nervous to continue on with the series because I love Vampire Academy so much and I wasn't enjoying that first book. But I finally got around to The Colleen Lily thanks to a video up on my channel right now, which is, it let a spinner wheel decide, but I read Lily got a 5 star. That was a pain in the ass of a video, but I'll leave a link so you can go watch it. But it forced me to read this book in a way, and I'm really glad it did, because I don't think I otherwise would have gotten to it as much as it was on my top of TBR list as well for the year. I genuinely don't think I would have gotten to it, but it's because I have been putting it off for so long at this point. And I really enjoyed this. Like, it's still not Vampire Academy level for me, and I still have some complaints with it, mainly with Sydney, who is just a character I don't really like, and she's our protagonist. We're in her head constantly. But I do think that towards the end of this book, a lot of the problems I have with Sydney are starting to be challenged by side characters, so that makes me like hopeful for the future. But the plot that was introduced in this book is so interesting, and I loved kind of going on that journey. It was a very addictive read, which is my main reason why I love Vampire Academy so much. It's just of how addictive of reads those are, and I got that feeling back with this book. And I fucking love Adrian as well, and yes, I re-sparked my love for the series, and hopefully the rest of the series will continue in that trajectory. And then the next book that I read is The Long Game by Elena Armas, which I give 5 stars to, and it's a galley I got from NetGalley. I didn't like this. I don't feel bad about it, because I do think this has a very decent setup, and I was intrigued in the beginning. I just like very quickly grew to dislike our female main character. I didn't like her. I thought she was a child. And she just acted like a child, and she's so selfish and self-centered, and she thinks everything's about her, and it got on my nerves. And then I did like the male main character decently enough. I wasn't like a big fan of him, but I also like didn't really have any complaints to him. But then, because it is like a slow burn, even though I didn't really feel slow burn to me, but it's marked as a slow burn, a lot of people calling it a slow burn, and it's hate to love kind of. When the guy kind of like starts falling for her, he loses just like all personality. I don't think it's romantic to just completely disappear in order to be the person who you like, the person another person wants you to be. That's not love, in my opinion. And I was not having fun with this book. And yeah, I also just didn't really feel any chemistry between the two leads. I didn't feel the connection there, you know. So yeah, wasn't a fan of this one. Wasn't terrible, because I do really like the small town it is set in, and I am willing to pick up the sequel to this book because there's a companion book coming out next year. Then next I read The Collector's Stories, edited by A.S. King, which I gave it 5 stars just like I got from Nagali. This is a anthology that I read, and it is, I feel like my ratings for anthologies, even though they are always my average rating and just like all the ratings combined, you know, I rate each story and then get an average. But somehow those averages still feel like perfect descriptions of how I feel about just like the collection in general, which I guess, you know, makes sense. But I was shocked when that happens, because when it's letter like 3-star exactly for my average rating, was like, yeah, it's about sums it up. There were some short stories in here that I really liked, but there's also some in here that I did not connect with at all, and most I kind of just felt fine about. Then next I read Faking My Benefits by Lily Gold, which I gave 4 to 5 stars to, because I do buy into the hype. This is my first White Shoes book that I've read, so I was a bit nervous going into it with that, but I've heard some great things about Lily Gold and this book in particular, so I was excited to check it out. And when I tell you I read this in one sitting, I read this in one sitting. I really mean it. And like, Lily Gold writes some long books. They're not like super long, but like they are a bit on the longer side for romances, which makes sense, because so I choose romance, you basically have to set up 3 relationships in this case rather than 1. But I think Lily Gold actually manages to do that so well. I think she characterized each character really well, and the relationships between each characters, even platonic relationships between the 3 guys, was set up just so well, and I can tell you so much about them. I had a great time. It was just such a fun, addictive read, and I'm very open to reading more about Lily Gold. My only complaint really for this book is that after the third act conflict, I wanted a bit more groveling from some of these guys, and that we got, but like overall I still like had a fun time with it. The next I read Monstress Volume 2, The Blood by Marjorie Liu Sana Takeda, which gives it 5 stars, and this was a reread for me. So basically, like a while back I read Volume 1 and 2 in this series, and then kind of fell off with it. I don't know why, but I did have bought a couple more volumes after this. I think I got up to volume 5 or 6. I'm not entirely sure. But I never really got around to them. And then last year in October, I wanted to start rereading this series, and then life went to shit, so I never went past the first volume. But finally got around to volume 2, and I didn't like it as much as the first one. The first one I gave it 4 stars, but I just feel like, even though I think this is an incredible story, like truly, I don't feel like I have enough of a grasp on the world to be like fully invested in it. Then next I read Cleat by Meryl Wilsner, which gives it 5 stars to the guy from Nagali. This is another disappointment for me because I wanted to like it so much. I did. I read my first Meryl Wilsner last year and I didn't like that one, but then she announced this book, and the cover of it on its own just had me sold, and I heard the synopsis and I had me so even more sold. So I was just so excited, and it was a bit of a letdown for me, just mainly because I don't think these 2 people should be together. They're very dysfunctional, they don't communicate, and neither of them should be in a relationship, let alone be in a relationship with each other. And I just think I never at any point throughout this book did the author like make a convincing case as to it's why these 2 should be together. But I did like the characters. I like kind of like the soccer B plot as well throughout it. It feels so wrong to say soccer, by the way. I kind of like that B plot throughout it. I liked, that's another complaint I had this book, like I feel like towards the end of this book, the author just completely forgot about the B plot and like tried to wrap it up quickly in an epilogue, but it was so unsatisfactory that I just And then next I read The Ecliptic Hyena by Hattie Helsmortel, which I give 5 stars to. This is a non-fiction book about the CRISPR technology and DNA, and for me, my reading experience with this book is kind of like split into like 2 parts, even though this book is split into 5 parts, but for me it's in 2. The first half is just kind of explaining what basic concepts of like DNA and CRISPR and stuff like that, and then the second half is kind of like more examples and applicable situations and how things could be used in the future, things are being researched right now, that kind of stuff. And the second half was so incredibly interesting to me. I flew through the second half because I thought all of it was so interesting. But the first half, even though very necessary, was also a bit more difficult to get through for me. I don't know, I felt myself zoning out at points, and you don't want that. Really. I don't know if I would say like the first half is a 3, the second half was 5, so I landed on a 4 in the end. Then next I read Save Me by Mona Kasten, which I gave to the 5 stars too. This is a German book, and it has been translated into Dutch, which is how I have become familiar with it, because I feel like it's been very popular on the like Dutch bookish world, and it has mainly been marketed as dark academia, which it is very much not. This is like the most stereotypical boarding school romance you can think of, but I ate it up anyway, so I'm not complaining. I mean, I am complaining. I have issues with this book. Part of this is that the sister of the male main character in this book is a student of a student-teacher relationship, and it's very romanticized, and it got on my nerves. It's a very small part of this book, but still, and that just was a massive disappointment. Like I said, it's a very cliche boarding school romance, except it's not a boarding school, it's just a rich private school with the rich guy, poor girl on a scholarship. That's the dynamic, you know? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's not even one of the better ones, but it just is very dramatic and very gripping, and I flew through this book, and therefore it's still a 3-star because I had a decent enough time with it. I don't think if you are looking for a quality romance, this is the place to be. Then next I read Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon Volume 2 by Naoki Takushi, which I gave 3 5 stars to. I read Volume 1 last month. I was really excited to continue on with the series. This one just ended up being a bit of a disappointment to me. I mean, it was still a 3 stars, so I enjoyed a lot of time. What I liked about this volume is that we kind of like delved more into the world and kind of like what we were gonna do with the story and stuff like that, where the first volume just felt very episodic. I had a bit less of that with this one, but because we're doing so much in this volume, I feel like at times it just got a bit like confusing and a bit hard to follow. And the next book that I read is Second Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which I gave out of 5 stars, and I got it from Neck Alley. This book comes out November 7th, so keep it on your radar because I really liked it. This is Ali Hazelwood's YA debut, and I do have to say, if you are like a big fan of Ali Hazelwood but I'm not a big YA fan, it definitely is a YA book, but I do feel like it reads more mature. But I really enjoyed it, and part of it is just the Ali Hazelwood sauce. Like I eat her books up every time. I think they're just so much fun, and I really just love this one. I really love the main character. I like the love interest. I really love the relationship that was developed throughout the book. I thought it was just generally had me squealing with excitement at several points. It also at a certain point made me cry, not in the romance department, but when it comes to a character like personal journey that revolves a lot around her relationship with her family. At a certain point it just like made me sob. So there you go. Then next I read The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas, which I give 5 stars to. I didn't purposely read 2 Elena Armas books in the same month. I probably wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the spinner wheel still deciding what I read. But I'm glad the spinner wheel made me read this, because at that point the Spanish Law Deception was a 3-star for me. I wasn't a big fan of it, and then the long game obviously I also didn't like. So at this point I feel like if it wasn't for the wheel I would have never picked this up, and I'm glad I did, because I do think this is my favorite of the Elena Armas books that I've read, which is also all she has published, I think, because I technically have nothing wrong with this. I really like her two main characters. I like their relationship build up. The only complaint that I kind of have in the relationship when it comes to their relationship is that Rosie kind of already has a crush on the guy from kind of like stalking him online, just like following him on Instagram, and he has a crush on him that way. And in the beginning it is a little bit annoying constantly hearing her like gush about him and she doesn't even know him properly. But that's like the only complaint I really have about the romance. I do feel like they have that very strong emotional bond together, and they also have physical attraction. I think the balances of the two is really well done. They also go kind of like on experiment dates, not necessarily fake dates, but like experiments, and I really liked those elements. I like the personal journeys of the two main characters as well. In all intents and purposes, I should have really enjoyed this book. Just for some reason, I truly can't put my finger on it, I couldn't connect to this book. and I just kind of, I didn't feel it, you know. Then next I read Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, which I gave 5 stars too. This is one that's been on my radar for a while and I've been very excited to read. I just always prioritize other books, so I'm very glad I got into this book, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I can't truly express again why it isn't a 5-star, because in all intents and purposes, everything about this was fantastic, the way it should be, but I didn't love it. I have a lot of 4 stars like that recently. I really love Pepper and Jack, our 2 main characters, and their personal journeys. I really loved, especially because they parallel each other. I really liked how, even though like they parallel each other, they were very different, but because they parallel each other, they could really just like confide into each other and relate to each other, which I really liked. I also really just loved the setup. It's kind of like the Twitter war between them. I thought that was so much fun, and such a fun and unique way to push these 2 characters just like that tiny bit more together. Also, the secret identity kind of storyline in here I also just really loved, and yeah, I had a blast reading this, and Emma Lord is definitely an author I'll be reading more of in the future. Then the opposite of a fun rom-com, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to. I really don't like this, and I do feel like if this was written by anyone else by Colleen Hoover, it one probably wouldn't have been written, but 2, I would have given it a 1 star, because Colleen Hoover, as much as she's not the best author in the world at all, just has this very addictive, entertaining quality to her writing, which just makes me want to keep reading. I read this book in 1 sitting, but it was not good at all. So there you go. I can't give it a 1 star in good conscience, because I did technically enjoy my time reading it, but this is not good at all. Just because, okay, we have 2 timelines in this, which was already my first issue with this book. I have nothing against 2 timelines, I just don't think it works in this book in particular. But in, let's say, the present day timeline, which is the main book, I would say, I did not like Date. She literally, at a certain point, she's on female main character, at a certain point she literally says the words like, when I'm around Miles, which is the love interest, I disappear, like I'm not Date anymore, I become whoever he wants me to be. And I'm like, that's not romantic. I know you're trying to play that off as like the most romantic shit in the world. It's not. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not. And it all went downhill from there, especially because there was nothing romantic between these 2 in my opinion. It's just pure sex. They barely interact even without having sex. They barely have like proper conversations without talking about sex, and therefore I just had a really hard time buying them as like an actual couple. And like I also just didn't like Miles. I just think he just played with Tate's emotions a bit, and she would get upset about him playing with her emotions. He'd be like, well, I told you from the beginning that no strings would be attached, and like stuff like that. I'm like, then why are you acting like strings are attached if there aren't any? So that just got on my nerves. And then the past storyline, I'm not gonna say too much about, besides what the actual fuck was that? Like, I can't discuss it without spoilers, but some decisions were made that absolutely did not need to be made, and I just, what the actual fuck, you know? Then, if you thought my dislike of Ugly Love gonna be beat, we have The Secret Diaries of Miss Mona Shiva by Julia Quinn, which I give 1 star to. Woo! Fun, isn't it? It wasn't. If I thought Miles from Ugly Love was a piece of shit, Turner in this book has just had him beat. Like honestly, Miles is nothing against Turner, because he is god awful. He has no emotion for this woman, but keeps toying with her emotions the entire time, and it's so annoying. Just because he wants to get his dick wet, that's the only reason. Julia Quinn might tell you towards the end that he's actually been in love with her this entire time, but no, he hasn't. I've been in his brain. He has not been in love with this woman at any point throughout this book. Even at this point where you're trying to tell me that he is, he's not. Especially because Miranda has been head over heels from him since she was 10. He was a couple of years, like he was 19, he was much older. But he just like gave her a compliment because she was kind of seen as kind of like the ugly duckling, and she was like very much bullied for her looks, and he just like complimented her, and then she was like swoon, and you know, wasn't loving him for years to come for just that reason, nothing else. And it got so annoying, because that generally is the only foundation for Miranda's feelings for this guy. Throughout the entire book, Julia Quinn never puts in an effort to give me another piece of foundation for his feelings, and because Turner just treated her like shit throughout the entire book, it just made me think, go run. And we're nearly at the end, but I have a positive note for you. After those 2 trash books, we have a 5-star nugget of goodness in the Anthropocene reviewed by John Green. Again, a 5-star. Another non-fiction. It's odd for me to do 2 non-fictions in a month and also rate them both so highly. What's happening to me? Anyway. But I really love this. This is a book I've been meaning to read since it came out, because just the way John Green talked about it when it was released, or was it being released, just it sounded really interesting, and it definitely was. It really was. And I have a hard time reviewing this book, which is ironic because this is a book of reviews basically, so it's ironic for me to like not know how to review it, but I generally don't have words for it. I just think John Green in this book just does a really great job at taking like the biggest concepts as well as the smallest concepts in the world and just treat them with the same importance and the same relevancy to society and philosophy. And I think that's so wonderful. And I also just loved how much of himself he kind of put in this. Like, it is very kind of like philosophical and humanity based, like what does this mean for the humanity, but it's also very much about himself as well, and him struggling with those questions as well. And I don't know, I loved it. And then we have finally arrived at our last book for today, which is Zoa by S. Jae-Jones, which I give you the 5 stars because I got from NetGalley. This took me an entire month to read, which it should not have, because this started off so good. I was very engaged in the novel, very invested, and I was excited to keep reading. I really liked our cast of characters. We have the perspective of Zara, obviously in the group, but also from one other character. And I just really loved the combination of the two. I liked the 2 characters separately, their personal journeys. I liked what was going on. We got some nuggets of like the world and the magic system, and I thought it was very interesting. And I really like fully dove into the magic system and the plot properly kicked off, and that's why I kind of like lost my interest, because even though I still kept really liking the characters and the cast of side characters as well that came in, and I liked the romance as well, because there's a romance B-plot throughout this, and I generally thought they were cute. They're a bit underdeveloped, a bit unsettled, but cute. They generally had some really cute moments, and so I should have been vibing still. I also still think the magic system in this world is so interesting, but the plot is just so boring to me, and I wasn't as engaged with the rest of the novel, and I kept finding myself not interested in picking it back up after I put it down for like the day. And yeah, that was everything I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of these books, if you've read them, as well as some of the books you read in September. And I've been talking for a really long time, so I'll see you next time. Bye.
Here I am again, the same old situation. Why does the God thing have to be so complicated? Should